So tonight's class is going to be discussing the holiday of Shavuot. This year, Shavuot is going to be on Friday, and we are going to celebrate the anniversary of the giving of the Torah, starting and going back 3,335 years ago. 3,335. There's an easy way to remember it. In the Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, page 88, the Talmud discusses a lot of details and insights into the Yom Tov of Shavuot, into the giving of the Torah, maybe. And what the Gemara there says about the mountain and exactly the date, and getting in all kinds of details of exactly what happened. And the Gemara deal brings a statement by one of the great rabbis, Rabbi Yossi Galile, who said, Bri Rachmana, blessed is the merciful one, who gave Uryan Tlisoi, the three light book, which is obviously referring to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Le'am Tlisoi, for a nation which is made up of three segments, Kohanim, Levim, Israel. Al Yedei Tlisoi, by somebody who was the third to his mother. It was Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. Beyarchet Lisoi, on the third month of Sivan. Beyoimet Lisoi, on the third day after the commandment to be separated in preparation for Shavuot. And then the commentaries add other aspects of three, which represent the Torah and the Jewish people, like we all coming from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is obviously three. Moses is named as three letters, Mem, Shin, Hey, all kinds of three. So this year, the year of the anniversary that we're celebrating is 3, 3, and 3, and 5 is obviously the 5 books of Moses, which is the Torah, so it's easy to remember. There's a lot to talk about Shavuot. Every year we discuss different insights and ideas. Obviously, this is a tremendous holy day, a very inspirational day, a very celebrated day. The fact that we are not only celebrating it by reflecting on the message of the Torah, but this is one of the holidays which is outstanding, specifically in the area that the Torah teaches us and the Talmud teaches us about physical celebrations, meaning the eating, the drinking, the expression of physical joy that one has to show for getting the Torah. The Gemara says it was Rabbi Yosef, one of the great of sages, who asked his family before Shavuot to prepare him a special young calf, Eglat Lisoi. You know, he wasn't a man with any particular, taste. He wasn't a guy which was involved so much in his food. He wasn't, he ate. Like you eat whatever you have to eat. Doesn't fit for a rabbi like Rabbi Yosef to ordering special menu lunches and menu dinners on a daily basis. But when it came Shavuot, the Gemara said, he actually said what I want. And it was a young calf, which apparently is a very choicest piece of meat. And that's what he wanted them to prepare. And he said even to his family that the reason I'm anticipating and I'm expecting a special feast in honor of this day, he said the word because ilav ayoime. If not for today, Kamo Yosef Ike Beshuka would have just been another Joe in the market. Who is growing in his knowledge and his wisdom and his connection to God, it has to do with the specialty of the day of Shavuot. So I want to celebrate it. I want to make sure that this is something that is being especially taken care of. And then obviously, this is a one Gemara. There's another Gemara. The Gemara talks about this is in different sources. The Gemara discusses what is the responsibility for a person during the holiday. Does he have to eat? Or she says, I would enjoy myself sitting and studying and praying all day. Is it also okay? And the Gemara goes into a debate. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, different verses. Some say that you can do as you want. Some say you have to give it some for the physical, some for the spiritual. It's a Talmudic discussion in Tractate Beitza in the second chapter. But the Gemara, that same discussion, the Gemara says that this discussion only applies in regard to all other holidays, with the exception of Shavuot. Shavuot, even the one who's seeing, even the one who's in the opinion that on a regular holiday you can pray and enjoy yourself by learning, there's no must for eating. Shavuot, he too would agree that no, here you're going to actually have to eat. And why? Lahara is to show that the Torah is something you are enjoying. It is pleasant for you. Don't appear to it and to yourself as if I'm schlepping and carrying a load, a pekla mayet, showing a Torah. A good life would have been without a Torah, free like bird. No, it wouldn't have been free. We would every day have to figure out what we're doing in our lives. Thank God there's a Torah, so we have the opportunity to really be free, having some direction, what to do and how to do, and what life is all about, etc.
So what if you
What?
what if you
There's no mitzvah to eat dairy. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that you have to eat dairy. What it says in the Torah that you have to eat. You have to be joyful. The eating of dairy is a custom which has to do with several reasons, mainly because they came off Mount Sinai and they realized that the meat that they ate until this point, which was not slaughtered, is actually making all their pots and dishes treif, and therefore they're going to need to wait until they can figure out a way of kashering it. They couldn't even eat the leftover meat in the fridge because it wasn't shechted properly. And to go ahead and shecht new chickens and cows, they couldn't have done on that day because that day was, what day in the week was the Torah given? The Torah was given on Shabbos.
yeah.
So if it was given on Shabbos, you can slaughter a cow on Shabbos. So they went and ate bagels and cream cheese and lox and some lasagna and ice cream for dessert. No, they don't. They did it at the Torah Center style. But I want to talk tonight more is about a very interesting idea, which in Hasidus talks about in Lent, is the idea of the Shavuot being a wedding. I mentioned it on Shabbos. It's really a wedding celebration. The idea of it being a wedding is mentioned in many sources. We're going to go through some of them and understand what kind of wedding it is. The Talmud, actually, the Mishnah in Tractate Ta'anit, comments on a verse in Shir HaShirim that King Solomon talks about a special crown that we are getting on the day of the wedding. And the Mishnah says, what is the day of the wedding referring to? B'yom chatunato, it says, as the Mishnah, Zu Matan Torah. The day of the wedding of the Jewish people with God, this is the day when the Torah was given. That was the wedding. Everybody got married. There is a groom, there is a bride. And we will also try to figure out who is the groom and who is the bride. different sources indicate different ideas on that matter. First of all, we have one of the common sources actually in Rashi and Chumash when it comes to the sin of the golden calf. And Hashem tells Moshe after the whole discussion and going through what happened with the golden calf, and Moshe finally kind of convincing God to forgive the Jewish people, but there is no tablets. The tablets were smashed. There's no luchot, which were given on Shavuot. What did Hashem say to Moshe? Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. We read it actually every public fast. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe psalecha shnei luchos avodim v'kozavtir al luchos hadvarim asher hoyu al haluchos rishonim asher shibarto. Carve out for yourself 2 new sets of tablets. And I'm going to write on them the word which was written on the original tablets. Moshe is reinvited to the mountain, which is writing the second set of Luchot, getting all the information again, which eventually came down the mountain on Yom Kippur. And when Hashem tells them to carve out those 2 tablet stones, as the verse says, Sol Lecha, you, the one, should do it. So Rashi brings in the Medrash that Moshe told God, okay, now you forgave them, please make another set of tablets. And God says, no, you're going to. What is the idea there? So Rashi brings a very beautiful Medrash. The Medrash says, explaining what happened to the tablets with a parable, so to speak, with an analogy of a king who had betrothed a wife to himself. And he had to travel overseas. This woman who was betrothed, called the Arusa, is left together with a bunch of maids. Some of them are troublemakers. And eventually there is all kinds of situations happening in the palace. Not all of them are in favor of a married woman. And the rumor is going around town that things are happening in the palace. The very good friend, who was actually the best man, so to speak, of that wedding, is coming and he takes the marriage contract called the ketubah and he rips it up. Why does he rip it up? The Medrash says, because when the king was going to come back, and obviously very upset at his wife, and wanting maybe to give you the consequences that you get if you're unfaithful, he can tell the king she wasn't your wife yet. There is no contract. You might have been engaged, but she wasn't betrothed because there's no ketubah. So that's why you rip the ketubah. Says the Medrash that this is exactly what Moshe did. The Jewish people who were betrothed to God at Sinai messed up with the golden calf. He's holding the contract in his hands. This is the tablet. Moshe says if they were already betrothed, then they're in trouble. A married woman who strays away from her husband is much worse. There is much more difficult consequences than someone who just is having fun and kind of gets into trouble. So Moshe, being the faithful shepherd, takes the contract, the ketubah, the luchot, smashes it on the ground. That's it. And then when God comes and he says, "What's going on?" He says, "No, I don't see a contract." So when he asked God for a second contract, God said, "Okay, you chewed up the first one. Go figure out the second one." That's why Psalecha, I want you to be the one making this set of luchot. That's what the matter says. And Rashi brings it in Chumash. When you study this Medrash, comes out very clear who is the groom and who is the bride. God is the groom, and We are the bride, right? That's what the Medrash says. He actually calls us the one who are betrothed to God. Then Rashi brings us also later, actually earlier, when it says that Hashem came out likrasaom towards the people. So Rashi also brings in the Medrash that what is he went towards us like the groom walks towards the bride before the chuppah, decade. So clearly there's a relationship of a husband and wife, and we are the bride, God is the groom. And it makes very well sense because if you consider the idea of a bride, the way it's being always discussed in Jewish mysticism, in Jewish spirituality, the wife represents the recipient and the husband represents the giver. So in the relationship of God and the Jewish people, we all know who is the recipient and who is the giver. We are the recipients and God is the giver. So we are the kala and who is the chassid. And the entire Shir Hashirim, by the way, the book of King Solomon, is all based on that notion of a chatan kala relationship. Matter of fact, what we sing every Friday night when we welcome the Shabbos, and we say Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala Dei Shabbat Nekabla. The world usually sings it in a way of understanding this verse, Lecha Dodi. Dodi means my beloved one. Who is it referring to? Obviously to God. So what are we asking God? Lecha Dodi, please, my beloved one, let's go. Likrat Kala, who is this bride? So usually people understand it referring to the Shabbos. It's almost like written as one sentence. Likrat Kala, towards the greeting of the bride, which is the Shabbos. Nei Shabbat Nekabla, let's welcome the Shabbos together. As if we're inviting God to come and welcome the Shabbos, the Kala. But the way it's being explained in other sources, that's a Hasidic philosophy, understand that. So it's not the same sentence. It's two separate meanings. First, we are asking God to come join us in helping us and assisting us to welcome the Shabbos. So the way we sing it is Lecha Dodi, please come over, my beloved one. Likrat Kala, towards you, bride, which is us, and support us and allow us to do what? Bnei Shabbat Nekabla. Give us the strength, give us the energy, give us the ability to welcome the Shabbos. Not the Kala is the Shabbos. Kala is us. And we need a groom, a good assistant to help us welcome this bride, the Shabbos. So we are asking God, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Bnei Shabbat Nekabla, to welcome the Shabbos. That's how the Alter Rebbe explains it in his Siddur, according to Hasidus. So clearly there's this concept of, what's it called, of, it's okay, makes a laugh, it's good. Whenever a person laughs, I'm very happy with it. So keep it up.
Okay.
Listen, either it tells you that she made a very good supper, or she's very happy that you're still starving and starving your singing. Something she's happy about.
She's happy that she's here hearing you.
Yes.
Okay. In the other end, we also find that when Hashem came to give the Mishkan, Hashem gave us the mitzvah to build a Mishkan. So the Medrash writes and compares it also with a king. Always the Medrash compares things to a king. God is obviously the king, so it's I guess a Midrashic way of explaining things is by putting the context of a king. So the Medrash said there was a king. Who the king had Bat Yachida, her only daughter. And one of the another prince came to marry. And they got married, And then the prince wants to take the daughter with him to his country. So the king tells him, this the daughter that you of mine that you married is the only daughter. The only daughter. To be separated from here, very difficult for me. To tell you not to take care, cannot. It's your wife, right? They can't stop you from taking you home to your country. I'm asking you one favor. Anywhere you travel, anywhere you establish your life, make a fatherless bed, you know, put a room on the side, leave one kiton, one small room that I can come join you. I don't feel detached and separated from my daughter. Says the Medrash that this is exactly what happened. Hashem came to give the Torah. Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Hashem tells them, listen, this is my daughter. The Torah is my daughter. And I'm going to let my daughter marry you. I'm giving it to you. I'm letting my daughter get married. But at the same time, I think you should go take a nap for an hour. He says, I can't let the law. I can't be separated from my daughter. My daughter. The Torah is my daughter. And my relationship to the Torah is like a daughter. My love to you is like a daughter. Very difficult to detach myself from her. But on the other hand, I need to give it to you. You need the Torah. And I want to give it. I'm asking you, you take my Torah, make me a room that I can live with you while you are observing the Torah. And that's why, right following the Torah, which mitzvah came, make me a mishkan. The asur migdosh v'shochanti betocha, make me a sanctuary, so I can dwell in your midst. Says the Medrash that the whole idea of that sanctuary was God wanting to stay with the bride, which is our bride, and wanting to be with her. That's a matter. So who is the groom and who is the bride? I guess we are suddenly the bride. A minute ago we spoke, we were the groom. We were the bride. Now we are the groom who are marrying, we betroth the Torah. The Torah becomes our wife. To the point that the Talmud says in many places, in many sources it's brought on, and the famous verse which it says in the end of Chumash Dvarim, Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov. The Torah that Moses has commanded us, morasha literally means it's an inheritance, the congregation of Jacob. And the Talmud says it's not morasha, you have to read that morasa. Morasa means what? She's betrothed. She's betrothed. The Torah is betrothed to the congregation of Jacob. She. Who is she? The Torah. So who is the groom and who is the bride? We are the groom. So in the one hand, you can explain it simply. You can explain it that depends. In the relationship to God, we are what? Kal. We are the recipients of that. In the relationship to Torah, we are the groom. But that doesn't work. What can a groom are we to Torah? What can a groom are we to Torah? Torah is our recipient. We are the ones who take instructions from the Torah. So Hasidus explains, the Alter Rebbe actually is the one who explains it now. Look at the Torah, his famous book. And he says that there is two levels to Torah. There is the Torah Shebichtav, the written Torah, and then there is the Torah Shebal Peh, the oral tradition. So he says, when it comes to the written Torah, we are obviously recipients. We cannot change or add or diminish. We have no control on the written Torah at all. The written Torah is untapped, right? That's the written Torah. The written Torah doesn't even expect us to do anything with it. Matter of fact, the written Torah is so purely representing God that the written Torah you can read, even if you don't understand what you're reading, you're still fulfilling the mitzvah of learning Torah. Because it's God's Torah. Not so much about what I understand and how much I appreciate it. The written Torah is on a whole different level. It's representing the chokhmah, the wisdom of Hashem. And when it comes to the written Torah, anybody who sits down to study the written Torah, you are learning from it. You don't give anything to it. So obviously, you are the what? The kala, the bride, who is married to that written Torah, Torah Shebechsav. But then comes the other aspect of it. With the Torah wants us and anticipates from us and even expects from us, we should put our effort in our mind, in our brain, in our intellectual powers to figure out and to add to it some wisdom. Give it, share an insight, figure something out which is not so obvious the way it's written. You bring it home. You bring it to the table. That what our sages always did. They expanded, they got into discussion, the reasoning, the give and take. What happens in this case? You create a scenario. And that scenario is now looking to adapt the original law, whether or not it applies to that scenario, doesn't apply to the scenario. We are learning over here on Thursday morning's Talmud. And you can see a lot of times are being spent. We're learning a subject called Zimun, which means joining three to bench together, which is derived from a verse, from two verses. And then the Talmud spent so much time and effort to adapt those principles and apply them to all kinds of scenarios. Literally scenarios. What happened? You ate. Two people ate. One already benched. He didn't wait for the zim. Easy joint. Easy not joint. What happened? Two ate. One came to join them in the end. He wasn't there in the beginning. Easier part of it. Easier. What happened? Two are Kohanim. One is a convert. What happened? One is a guy. So many different scenarios. It doesn't end. Doesn't good. It really does not end. What? The waiter. What type of a waiter? Is he a waiter which walks around to the table so he bridges all tables together? Is he a waiter that just stands in the kitchen? What's the idea of these scenarios? The Torah on its own contains a certain rule. What is we? I don't mean I. It's the sages. It's the ones who had the blessing, and we are further trying to understand them, went and added. This is really additions of more compiling more insight into the pre-existing rule and to try to apply it to so many different cases. And this is ongoing. Ongoing. About a couple of weeks ago, I got a call from somebody. I think I shared it here. They read it in class. That he is talking about this new man-made meat. What do you call it in English? There's a word for it. Basar meshurvat, whatever, like manufactures meat in what blessing do you make of it? Fine. I wasn't asked this question. Somebody is asking me, can he make tefillin from the skin of a cultured cow?
There's no skin in the cold.
Because you make tefillin from the skin of a cow, parchment. That's what you're right. Can it be made from a cultured cow? Or does it have to be from a living cow? I don't know. I'm just giving you crazy scenarios.
Dolly.
Yeah, Dolly the sheep.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
It's a
Clone.
clone.
That's a clone.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
It's still alive, it's not cultured.
Okay, so in other words, what I'm only saying is that scenarios don't end.
No.
Right.
It's endless. And this is our mission, this is our responsibility to bring in the wisdom of God into every situation of life. So at that point, we are the ones who are the groom who the Torah kind of receives from us. So we are changing. At one point, we were the bride, and then when you turn around, suddenly you are the groom, and the Torah is the bride. You can be both without transgendering.
Okay. Clear that up, okay.
No, I saw where it's going. I know my friend. I saw my friend Schneider is about to make a comment, so I took it away from him.
No, no.
So what's the
Just to
point?
get in here for the cake I'm shopping.
So what's the point? The point is that when it comes Shavuot, you look at it, what kind of holiday is it? It is really the holiday which got us in a state of marriage with God. This is the greatest union that you can imagine. Nesuin. Nesuin. If you look in the customs of marriage, in our halachic authorities, are bringing out numerous customs to do at a wedding, which their source is that's how it was when the Torah was given. In other words, viewing that this is the original wedding. The way things were done there, we should do too. For example, we escort the groom and bride with just even the escorting itself. You know that Moses is referred to by the Medrash with the word shoshvin, which means escorter, or in Yiddish they call it unterführer. Rashi says that when it came the night of Shavuot, Moshe was the shoshvin of the people. He came, hey guys, we gotta go. The, the groom is waiting. We gotta go meet him. Even in the parable I mentioned you before with the reaping of the ketuvah, if you look in Rashi, Rashi uses the term shoshvin, that Moshe was the shoshvin, which means literally the idea of the one who escorts and leads the chatan and kala to the chuppah. And usually there are only candles. And it's brought down in the halachic books that the reason for candles carrying to the chuppah, escorting the groom and bride, is because there were flames when the Torah was given. The mountain was engulfed in fire. So we should also use candles. We should use candles.
What about a torch?
Torches. You can use torches. There were 10 commandments. That's why we have 10 people by a chuppah. And all this is really custom, which is qualified by sages. I'm talking 800-900 years ago. This is not modern day, you know, arrangements. Let's put together this idea and try to play it together. In Hasidus, they talk about the Alter Rebbe in Torah or actually. He talks about what is the idea of Moshe being a Shoshvina escorter. The Alter Rebbe says, why did the groom and bride need escort? Why can't they walk themselves? Why can't they walk themselves? So I just for another joke, once by a wedding, two rabbis were discussing that. So one rabbi tells the other rabbi that maybe the idea of being carried to the chuppah, if you're going to the chuppah and with all the joy and you're starting life, you should remember that one day you're going to be carried. Yaskir lo yom hamita, like it says in Pirkei Avot. Remember, you're going to die one day. You're going to be carried. That's why they're holding you, especially when you're dressed in your white kittel. You know, they say, remember, you're not always going to walk on your own. One day you're going to be carried. So that's like a way of hinting that take life serious. So the other rabbi says to them, I don't think that's why they carry this couple. Looks to me that they carry the 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 groom. He shouldn't run away. They're holding him on. But the rabbi said, no, I think they're holding him. He shouldn't run too fast. There's all these jokes, but there's no jokes in Torah or the Alter Rebbe, because in the Zohar, Kadosh says, actually, the Zohar says Moshe was the one who was the best man, the one who was basically escorting God to the chuppah, and Aaron was the one who carried the Jewish people. Moshe Shoshvina de Malka, Aaron Shoshvina de Matranuta. That's what it says in the Zohar, in numerous places. What do you need escorters? So the Alter Rebbe says a very original insight. The Alter Rebbe says that the reason for escorters at a chuppah is because a groom and bride, which were really until this point strangers to one another, and now they have to suddenly transfer themselves, transform themselves into a state of husband and wife, the closest relationship we can have. They are literally, the Alter Rebbe says, physically embarrassed from each other. They don't feel comfortable to change from that state to that state.
So the only one who had a relationship with God is Moses.
Exactly. So that's what it says. We have escorters. The escorters are the ones who already experienced marriage. That's why it says, and according to the custom of observant Jews, is that the escorters are a married couple. A married couple. So they already had the experience. And they can kind of inspire and motivate this couple, the groom and bride, to walk the chuppah and to be able to stand with happiness, because it says, even, by the way, it says if the father is divorced and they're marrying a child, they should get a couple who is married, and the father can walk along with that couple. But that couple should be a married couple for this idea, because you need to encourage and represent and introduce the idea of closeness to these people who were very estranged and afar and separated from each other, even especially if we go with this Kabbalistic philosophy that there are two halves of the same soul, but they took a long break between the time they were two halves of the same soul. They were 18 to, same thing, same idea. What's the point? The Rebbe explains that what happens to the Jewish people, why did we need Moses to be as our Unterführer, Aaron? Because we were distanced from God for all this time period in Egypt. We didn't meet him for a long time. And then he came in Egypt, did a few miracles, got us out, splitting the sea, and now we are standing by the chuppah. We are standing by the chuppah. Who is by the chuppah? God and the Jewish people. They're joining into a marriage. Hey, we are standing like this. What do we know about it? Like, how am I gonna transform from being alone and distant to suddenly become in a unity with Satan, in a connection with God on such a level of marriage? What do we need to do? We need someone to interfere, someone to escort, someone who can give, some direction, some inspiration. And that's what Moses did. And that's why till today, we have that Unterführer idea is to literally represent the Chatan and Kala, which was the original marriage, and we are just imitating that marriage by also having a couple carrying the husband and wife to the chuppah. Matter of fact, even the chuppah itself is brought down. These customs, by the way, there is a book called Tashbetz Katan. Tashbetz Katan is a student of one of the authors of the Tosfot. His name was the mayor of Rothenburg. Maram Rothenburg is actually famous at some level because he was a rabbi who was arrested in, in jail, France, and they wanted to redeem him. They asked for a ransom. What do you call it?
Friends,
And he ruled that they should not be given any money. And he ended up dying in jail, and he wasn't buried for many years. They finally, the whole story, it was released. He was one of the Balei Atosfos, Marami Rothenburg. And he had a student who that student was allowed to come visit them, was given special permission. And he wrote lessons, rules, customs, which he heard from his rabbi while being in jail. And we have a printed book. It's called Tashbet's Kotel. The word Tashbet actually is an acronym. Is an acronym of the words. The tough of Tashbet is Teshuvot, means responsa. And then he writes his name, Shin Bet Tzadik Shimshon Ben Tzemach. That was his name. So Tashbet, Teshuvot, responsa of Shimon Ben Tzemach. And he writes all these things that I just told you, the customs, the way they are related to the giving of the Torah. He actually wrote a big, he's the one who writes it in his book. He recorded. So I'm talking about a book which was written many, 700 years ago or more, 800 years ago. So he actually explains that the chuppah, for poles, a curtain on top, the groom and bride are standing under that. You know what he says? This represents Mount Sinai. Because Mount Sinai was also not placed on the ground. The Talmud, you know the famous story, that God kind of touched the mountain, put it over their head, served like a threatening, tool. You better take the Torah, if not the mountain ends up at you. It's a metaphor, because really the way the Alter Rebbe explained very beautifully, the Alter Rebbe says, it wasn't a threatening mountain. It was forced, but it wasn't forced by pain or forced by hatred. It was forced because God had expressed like a mountain which is extended from the ground. God extended so much love to us with the miracle of the splitting of the sea a few weeks earlier, the exodus from Egypt, that we couldn't say no. It was forced, but it wasn't the force that someone is standing with a stick and telling you better take it, if not, I'm going to beat you up.
It's not a shotgun wedding.
It wasn't a shotgun wedding. It was a very beautiful um, response of the fact that how can you say no? Hashem showers and bestows upon you so much greatness, so much love. You can't say. You can't say. So that's what it's called force. But the metaphor is of the mountain being over our heads, right? That's in the Talmud and Shabbos. That's the chuppah. So you have the chuppah, which is like Mount Sinai. You have the candles, which is like the mountain being engulfed in fire. You have the escorters, which is Moses and Aaron. You have the contract, which is like Torah. You actually have the tablets. Is also it was expensive tablets. It was made of very expensive stone. This is the ring. with all the goodies. So really, everything you have is all a part of this great experience called Shavuot or Matan Torah. So it's really a double wedding. Matter of fact, it's even a triple wedding. Because what happens is, consider this: when you are reading the written Torah, right? Then we are the recipients. We are the kala. When you are studying the oral tradition, you're adding to the Torah. Then we are the what? The chatan, and the Torah is the kala. But once you learn, what does God say? If you learn my Torah, I'm going to reward you. Right? Remember the study? Then you're becoming back the kala. So now again you're a recipient. There's chatan, kala. I mean chatan, kala, and chatan, kala, chatan,
Kala, chatan, kala.
kala, chatan, kala. We give the written Torah. We give here like a ring. She becomes a recipient. What's the ring we give her? We give her our wisdom. First, the written Torah gives its wisdom to the oral Torah. But you can't study the oral Torah if you don't start with the written Torah. But the Chatan is the one, the Torah is the Chatan who gives the Kala. But then we change, we become the givers. So this is our wisdom, which is our ring presented to the bride. The Torah becomes our bride. Then God gives his ring to us back, which is the reward and the wonderful promises that the Torah gives us for studying Torah. So he is now acting as the Chatan, and we are becoming the Kala. All this as I'm sitting. So you can imagine when it comes to a wedding, you don't fall into the wedding from straight from work, right? You don't come into the wedding straight from work. You don't come into the wedding after a day of reading newspapers and following the news, watching this channel and that channel. And now you look at the clock, oh, time to go to shul, 8:30 services, Shavuot starts, let me go light my candle. Comes to a wedding, you there's preparation. You spend money, you spend effort. Exactly, yes. Spend money, you give tzedakah, you spend money, you buy food, you make food, you are preparing. No wedding happens suddenly. Everybody, I married 3 kids. I tell you a little bit what it takes. Okay?
You got 3 more.
God willing. I think I have more than 3 more, but that's good. But it takes, you know, no one does nothing happens on its own. Preparations with telephone, with calls, with money, with spending, with tickets, with this, with that, and organizing them. That's what a wedding, Baruch Hashem is. That continues life. But this is a wedding. Shavuot is really the way because if you want to, as they say in the modern New Age language, you need to have a meditation, uh, aspect as to walk into Shavuot. What am I meditating about? What am I looking to gain from it? You're looking to gain a good wedding experience. You want to make the bride happy, and you want to make the groom happy, and you want to walk down the aisle. What?
Where you make your wife happy.
That's exactly that. You want to walk down that aisle into the Torah given with enthusiasm, with joy, you know, optimistically. Whatever happens later is going to happen later. On the day of the wedding, everybody can be optimistic. That's the best time. If you walk down the aisle to your chuppah, you're not optimistic on life, I would not walk. I would rather take a little break. Give it that kind. You can't. You walk with the trust in Hashem that this is going to hopefully have the potential and it's going to work out. And yes, Everything takes work. It's going to be hard work, but we are not stopping. And that is Shavuot. That's a real, real special day. It's a real, real uplifting day. It's a real joyful day. A real joyful day. This is the last of our holidays for the year 5773, 5783. This is it. We went to our Rosh Hashanah. We went to a Yom Kippur together, and a Sukkot, and a Shmini Atzeres, and a Torah, and a Hanukkah, and a Purim, and a Pesach, and a Lag BaOmer. And now we're on Shavuot. That's it. After Shavuot, then you start breathing. No more holidays. And then you only try to go to the summer, hopefully. I hope it's summer. And some fast days. And not too much longer, we start building up. Yeah, you have to start working in the next calendar. That's how life goes. So let's do the best. The way, how does it say? Hakol olech achar achitum. Everything follows the end. Let's make sure that the end of this year, Yom Tov season. My wife actually gave me this observation. She's working hard all year preparing holidays, running the holiday programs, especially here in Shul, just last for Omer, the Seder before. It's all on her shoulders. And now you saw from the window schlepping, getting the kids. More than schlepping the food, it's to mobilize the kids to help to schlep the food. That's a whole task on its own. And then you know about after Shavuot, oh, we can start breathing, and God willing, get ready again. But at least we brought it to closure. It was a beautiful year. So make sure to come here and to be here the Shavuot on Friday, God willing, starting tomorrow night. We're going to learn. We're going to have in the morning the Torah reading. We're going to have on Kiddush. Then we're going to have Yom Tov on Shabbos. It'll be fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
What's the question?
Doesn't Shavuot also mean pledge?
Shavuot means an oath. And that's one of the reasons the holiday is called Shavuot, because we gave God an oath that we are not going to change him to another God. And he gave us his oath that he's not going to change us to another nation. One of the reasons.
When Moses had to go up and make the tablets, he couldn't use metal implements. What did God provide him to be able to?
It says that in the Medrash that under God's throne of glory, there was a special cipher stone. What do you call it? Sanpirion. A special sunfire or sapphire.
Oh, sapphire.
So it was sapphire stone, and that's what the tablets were made of.
Because it wasn't the chips that came off that made him a rich.
Exactly. Became rich from the chips. Yes.
Another question I have. The Torah was given by force, by demand. Hashem demanded, you want to take it or not? Or.
So we explained, the Rebbe says that before it was not.
Yeah. My question is if Torah was given by force, by Hashem, by demand, you cannot divorce it.
What?
You cannot divorce it.
Why not?
By Allah, you cannot divorce it.
That's right. That's one of the reasons it says that God kind of forcing on us is like which Abraham is referring to halachas of a rape, someone rapes
Yeah.
his girl, his wife, he cannot divorce her. That actually brought on some books which talk that language. They go into that knowledge. Have a wonderful good night. Have a happy Yom Tov.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Good night.
Yes.
He might have wanted to divorce us, but if we say we don't want the divorce, then you can't force a divorce on a wife
Well, no, you can,
unless she said I'm ready to take it.
Hosea, right, he divorced, but he took Israel back. He didn't, so.
Yeah, there's such a